All right, so the first thing you're going to do is take assignment 7, first number 1, and if you right click on it, you can duplicate. Click on duplicate, and then it'll pop out. I'm going to drag it out of that folder so it's in its own new folder there and just resort that so it's easy for me to manage that. And go back in here and of course get rid of the word copy and just change that 7 to 8. All right. And double click on it. It's a Photoshop document, so it will open up in Photoshop. If it doesn't open up in Photoshop, then you're clicking on your assignment submitted screenshot, not your Photoshop document. As that goes. I have correctly clicked on my Photoshop document, so it is open. And I'm okay, right away, I don't need my numbers for this part of my assignment. In fact, I don't, in this case, I can throw them completely away. So I'm just going to go ahead and just toss my numbers away. Since they're in their own folder, that was as easy as just clicking on it and sending it on its way. But before I get too carried away, I'm going to have to think about a few things from the very beginning, as in what kind of colors do I want? What are my choices? Well, again, there's billions of colors out there to choose from. But to keep things in order, and in this case, whipping things along, I'm going to go ahead and select some colors from the swatches panel that I like, and click on, in this case, this blue right here, dark cyan blue. Click on that, makes it the front panel, but I need some information about that blue, not just its name. Actually, what I do need, in this case, from the color picker, is its hash color, or its hexadecimal color, and perhaps the RGB values. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, Command C, and go over into a text file and start creating a style sheet. In this case, my dark blue that I'm going to use throughout my design, my base dark color, will be have a hexadecimal value, and I can see a number of that, and also an RGB color value, which I can type in here, and I can, again, 0, 74, 128. And again, I'm getting all that from the color picker, and I'm just typing that into my Word doc, which I better save. So I'm going to file save here, and we'll just make sure that that's style sheet. Okay. All right. So there's my style sheet, working right along. So there's my dark blue. I also want a light blue, in the case maybe an action blue color type. So I can go in here, maybe use the color picker there, or pick a color that's already been mixed, so to speak. In this case, this blue here. And I can copy that, and then it can be a light blue. And again, a hack mark there, and an RGB mix of 0, 191, and 243. All right, I got that color. I also want a basic body color for my text, and it used to be that black was fine, but it's found that it's better and easier on the user's eyes if we're using a charcoal gray. This one is the 333 gray. I'm going to copy that. It's about an 80% gray, and put that in there for, that'll be my body text color. And again, its RGB is 51 across the board. Okay, so I got my body gray. I also like mid gray or evil gray, and so we call that medium gray or evil gray or something, Earl gray. Yeah, and again, that's 666. Short code is 666, that's why it's evil. But it's just because it lives. RGB is 102. And again, these are, I'm not holding you to any specific colors on your own. You can develop those as you will. But again, this is where you get the information as necessary. Also, you might want white somewhere along the line. White always comes in handy somewhere. And again, by now, hopefully you know that, that what its hex number is, and its RGB number is 255 across the board. Yeah, let's see if I have any other colors. Those will probably be some, for me, I'll stick with those colors for the time being. If I need more colors, I can always add them, and I probably will end up doing that as I go. But at least I got some things to work with. Click OK. Next thing is, I have to decide on a font family. Now, I could do this one way. I can just pick a font family and then go through and have to hassle with all my text one at a time. Or I can use Photoshop at its full capacity. In the layer panel at the top here, next to kind, it has a couple, these are the actual types of layers that are available. Again, the pixel layer or the graphic layer. You've got the adjustment layers, text layers, shapes, and smart objects, and then you have an adjustment for filtering. Right here, if I click on the filter for just type layers, all the type layers in my entire collection there will appear. The ones with the eyeball that's solid are the ones that are visual. They're the ones that are grayed, where the eyeball is grayed out, means that they're in one of the folders that has been visually turned off, but they are being accounted for. The value to this is that I can now, if I select all the text that is available from, select the bottom, hold the shift key, scroll to the top, select the top, everything will be selected. I can establish my font family for every bit of text at one time instead of having to go through bit by bit. So now it's really up to you what font to choose. Again, it's always safe to pick ones that are more or less common, something that's easy to read, and goes with the aesthetic of your theme. I'm doing a tech website, so I'm going to find a kind of a modern. Personally, I like Century Gothic, so I'm going to go ahead and click on Century Gothic. And from the up here in the character panel, I can actually select the word, the name here, hit Command C, and go right down to into my style sheet and Command V, and there's Century Gothic. There's my font family. And meanwhile, all my font layers now have been changed to Century Gothic, just like that. And then I click off the T, and I'm back to the regular selection. So at this point, I can decide on a few things. Well, to make things a little easier to do, I like to turn things off and just work in parts and pieces as I go and build the site there. That way I don't get overwhelmed by all the work that needs to be done, but essentially just kind of keeping things in order. In my decision here, I'm going to, I have a couple options I can go with. I can use these boxes or not. In this case, I'm going to click off all of them, and I'm going to leave that for a moment and open up my main navigation. So, I'm going to leave these like this, but I'm going to fill this with a solid color. And since it's already there, I can take advantage of that box, my shape there, by clicking on it, going into my shape tools there, clicking off the stroke, and then filling it with my color of choice. Now, in this case, if I want to make sure it's a specific color, instead of trying to guess it from here, I can actually click on the color picker and go. And since I've already made notes over here, I can copy that and paste that right into there. Click OK. And now my shape will be filled with blue. But now you can't read my text. So again, but that's easy. So I can double click on that. And since I've already selected white as a color, I can type that in there too. So, okay, well, all right, fine. I typed an extra F. As it goes. So I've taken advantage of using my box that I created there to make now a form. So I don't have to make a shape anymore. It's already done for me. But these guys here, I'm not going to use, and I'm not going to use them at all. So I'm going to go ahead and throw them away completely because they are just extra weight. Now, again, this is really up to you how you want to do that. I could have very easily have used the existing header box there and filled that up with color or something. But either way, just think what can you do with the shapes? And I'm going to give you a couple examples here as we go down how to manage your existing shapes. The next thing here is I'm going to go back to my logo. And actually, both my logo and my utility text, I don't want this color. I want them to be that dark blue. So I can select both of those texts, and since they are text layers, they will behave together at the same. I can give them the same values at the same time. I can click on the color bar there, and a really quick way of getting the right color, I can click on that existing color there, and that's that blue. And now those two items are blue. All right. Next thing is I'm going to open up I'm going to zoom in. And I need to add, part of this one thing I do want to see you guys have integrated already into is some type of logo or symbol that you've integrated into your logo. I happen to have a little logo here or symbol that I want to use. My eye of art. So I'm going to drag that puppy right in there. Close it out. All right, first of all, I'm going to hide my T there and then position this guy over here. I'm using my guides and grid there, so it's not just anywhere. I'm also going to take resize this, Command T, so that it fits better in there's some better and more precise spacing. And again, using my guide for that, the guides there. So I'll position that, turn on my art, I'm going to move that over. A couple things I'm looking at already. I'm going to turn off my guides for a sec in my grid here. And note that I've noticed that my eye of art there is not the right blue. So I can click on that layer now because it's a pixel layer. I can lock the pixels by clicking on that lock there. And I can go to Edit, Fill, and I can click on the color. And it just happens to be the right blue. That's great. So I'm going to click OK and click OK. And now my symbol is the blue I'm going to be using for the rest of my design. So again, that was just a way of quickly editing a pixel fill. Next thing is to style my header there, my logo. Turn on my guides there. Now, this is going to be my logo. I want it to be much more prominent in my layout. I'm going to turn off the grid again. So it's going to be much, much bigger than that. So I'm going to go ahead and just see what it looks like. 48's pretty good. So I'm going to turn on my grid again and see how that fits in there. Again, not just arbitrarily positioning it, but using my guide to help me. All right. Let's see what 60 looks like. Yeah, let's go with 60. So this is for my own enjoyment. So I'm going to go with 60. Now, positioning that in there, I'm going to note that this is 60. That's a style. I want that style. So I can go back down here, and one of my first styles will be my logo. And that was 60 pixels. I can Command P this by 60 pixels. Also, it's Gothic regular. And it's just really important that you type in these little regulars and things like that because, well, in this case, actually a font weight. I'm going to put in font weight because that's a better, more descriptive value there. In this case, a font weight, a moderate font weights go from 100 to 900. 100 being lightest, 900 being boldest. So if you want a regular, it would be 500. So that'll guarantee that my what otherwise might be construed as a header value might by default become bold. I don't want it to be bold. I want it to have a font weight of a medium size, or in this case, 500. And also the color. So I'm going to go back up here and grab my dark blue color, so I can grab that there. And add a little colon there. So right now I've got my style for my logo just like that. And in theory, if I add a couple, like a semicolon, or let's see, a bracket there and a bracket there, that'd actually be a strip of CSS right there. So as that goes. I'm not really concerned about your syntax, but I do want to have enough styles that you can maintain. Make sure you're saving this stuff as you go so that you don't lose it in a power outage. And once in a while, click things on and off to see how they go, just to make sure everything's behaving. And again, sticking to your guide. I'm going to move this guy over a little. One other thing that you can do for spacing if you don't want to zoom in too far. Okay, well, we'll just leave it there. I guess it's fine. I'll leave that there. Okay, so I got my logo taken care of, so I'll just turn that and make sure that my text and my logo are together in the same folder so that they act independently. And then I've got my utility menu over here, which I actually like the size of, and I like the color, and I like the position. So I'm going to leave that, but again, it's 24 pixels, so I'll copy that, and I'll go down here, and I'll make a note of utility. My utility there is at 24 pixels, and it's it's dark blue. And actually, all this right here, I can keep this font weight. I can keep all of that right there as it applies to here. Well, actually, all of that. The only real difference is the size. So, yeah, even here you copy and paste. Say, okay, and then for my main menu, similar style. Main nav. And it's actually the same thing, except for the only difference here is the glass color. So I'll copy all of that. And then just make this white. Okay, make sure that's appropriate amount of Fs. And again, this is for my design. You certainly can use any colors you wish as they work. And size. Now, make sure you're making these big enough so that a person that is using a mobile can actually see these. But as that goes, pretty much got my header under control and my main nav. So next thing is my hero. In this case, I've got a box here that is going to be gone. The words graphic carousel themselves might be gone. But one thing that might stay is actually using this as my my advancement. So I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option and type an asterisk, and I will get a little bullet point there. And I can use that as my my little advancement navigation. We'll come back to that in a moment. Meanwhile, I've got my hover, I got my hero box, but I don't want a box there. I actually want to put in an image. But I don't want to have to fight my image. I want to be able to, and I can very simply and quickly create a mask by doing this. Now, what I need though is my path layer or panel. So I'll go to paths. There's my path. When you select a shape, it will appear as a path. If you double click on the path, it will create, with a copy of that, it will allow you to edit it in this manner. By selecting it, it will create a selection. And with that selection, I can actually create a mask, a mask of my hero, and then turn off. I'm going to throw away the box there. Now, wait for it. I'm going to go find a nice, big, large graphic, like this one. And I'll I think this is 101 Broadway, so I'll name that accordingly. And I can grab this whole thing and drop it somewhere generally in the area that I want it to go. And notice, because it's, and then make sure it's in the mask folder, which it is. And because it is, it's only getting nicely masked. So and then I can take advantage of that. Again, exactly like we did with the animation last week. I can go to Edit Free Transform. There's my, I'm going to hold down the Shift key and maneuver this around so it works. And oh, look at that. It's got a nice little screenshot. Oh, a little bit bigger. Maybe I'll take advantage of that a little bit. The fact that it says design there is brilliant. All right, but again, I'm not trying to get the whole sign in there. I'm actually trying to take advantage of the value of the sign and cropping it accordingly. So you can actually create a much more dynamic and exciting image than just trying to fit something into a certain area. So that's, again, not only the value of being able to put anything in there, as long as it fits, is great. That you don't have to, you can find that nice cropping aspect. Now, this little advancement thing, now I need to move that above my image here, so I'll just drop that up there and change it to white so I can actually see it. And there's my little, and there, now I've got my little temporary advancement icon thing going on there too. So that'll definitely tell the client that this is going to be some type of carousel, and I might actually be able to use that in the end run. We'll see how that goes. So we'll leave that in there like that. Whoops. Next thing is content. So with content, I need to create a few. First of all, I'm not using that box whatsoever, so I'm going to just throw that whole puppy away. I'm going to turn on my guides and grids. I should have a guideline there that should not be interrupted with. All right. Since my guides are there, I don't really need my guide box anymore. But I do want to know where these are going to actually be, so I can select them. I can use my I can drag a guideline over, and like I said, it'll snap. Now that's a wrong number. 59.2 is not a good number because it's got a 0.2 in there, and it really should be 60. So I'm going to go to View, New Guide, and put one at 60, horizontal or vertical. I'm sorry, and that'll make it nice and clean. So that's my edge there, and then I'll come back down here, and that's a good number. 440. That's a perfect number. So that position where my header one's going to be, I can use that guideline there to keep things in place. I do the same thing with content. Click on that and drop that down, and as long as that's a whole number, then we're good to go. All right, now that that's there, I can consider a couple things. Now I have to put some verbiage in there, and as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't have to be English. Lorem ipsum, some pseudo-Greek, or I guess it's Latin, I'm sorry. Click on that, it'll generate some, I'll just grab some text here, how much I need, that Command copy, then go back here, and I'm going to, first thing, I'm going to create a boundary box for my text. Because right now, if I type this, if I type in there, it'll just keep typing off until ever. But I want to create a boundary box so my text is contained. But I also want to make sure that I'm using the same basic padding here. I'm going to turn on my guide here and make sure that I have 20 points out. Let's see, 980. So I'll put one in here at 980. All right. And then I'm going to get rid of content. Just throw that to the side. And get my text tool and then create, using those guides that I already just created, create a boundary box. And I'll show you why in a minute. Once I got the boundary box there, I can paste in my lorem ipsum. I'm going to turn off the guides here and the grid and turn that off for a second. Now, a couple of things. First of all, it's way too big. It doesn't need to be that big. But it can't be, the rule of thumb, it should not be smaller than 16 pixels. 16 pixels, which doesn't exist as a free, so I'm going to have to type that in. Return. And also, the spacing on it should not be, it could be 24. And actually, I can add a whole another sentence or two in there, maybe. Fill up this whole space. There, and as that goes. And I'm going to rearrange that. So now make sure the color there is, and then if I want, in this case, change that color to the charcoal color that I wanted to use instead of black. Change that. Same thing with the header. Make sure that that's also that color. Now again, like I said, I don't necessarily have to type in anything there for header itself, but regard its style. So I'm going to turn my guides, my grid back on here and See what else is going on. I got my guides. I've got about 60 pixels here to work with if I really wanted to do some fancy styling. In fact, my header one should probably be bigger than that, as that's the same size as my navigation. So it certainly should be much bigger than that. So even 36 would be better. Now, I'm going to do a quick thing. I'm going to remove this guide right here, the guide that, get rid of that. And then hold down the Shift key and select both my, well, actually, I select my whole content folder there. And then move everything down so that the header there now is positioned to that lower area there. But since everything was still spacing there, and I've got all the way to here to actually go there if I really wanted to do anything else, I can stick at that. But I'll leave that there. So again, using the guide and the grid to keep things that in nice in order. Okay, I got my content moving along, I got my CTAs. Now the same theory as we did last week where you create one CTA and then duplicate it, I'm going to just style one CTA and then use those basic styles to be replicated. So for this assignment, at this point right now, just focus on dealing with one CTA. And if that, just to make it easier, turn off the other two. Okay, you should make sure you add some guides if you need to. In this case, I do. I need to establish the outside guide on there. So if I click on my CTA box, I can pull out a guide and it will snap right to that edge. I don't even have to fight it. I can also take that advantage here with where my graphic ends and starts, or my header. Now, I realized when I designed this earlier that I might have mixed up my box. So I'm going to have to do something with this in a minute because I have to reconfigure how I want this all represented. But other things I've got going on here is, do I really want to use that entire space? Because actually that means it butts up against this graphic, and that might not really work. They might get really cluttered if I got three things going across here because they all kind of blend together. So let's consider some spacing. So this is where you can take the element you've got here, the wireframe, and modify it in measurement-wise, okay, where it actually will be of some value. Here, if I take everything in, 10 pixels, I can actually create a nice quick, and I can, grabbing just the shape layers. Again, if I hold down my command key, I can get the graphic and the CTA box. I can move them in concert because they are the same type of file or layer. They will act the same way. Edit free transform. And as long as I'm moving in a linear direction, nothing will get stretched. So I can drop everything on, I can go over a nice to 315, 10 pixels over that way. And I can go 10 pixels. See, I started at 313, so I come in here to, and I go 1, 2, 3 there. Okay, so that should be like 10. I'm going to turn on my guide. Okay, I'll play that. I'll turn on my guides here to see how far I actually went over. Oops, wrong. Okay. So one way to make sure I've gone farther enough over is actually I can use what's called a shim. I'm going to get my selection tool, my rectangle selection tool, go up in the option bar, click on fixed size, and type in a specific size. In this case, I want a 10 by 10 little box. And all I'm using this for is to establish the fact that I went way too, well, actually, I went in 20, didn't I? So I can do one of two things. First of all, I can put that on normal and measure this and see how far I went over this way. And it turned out I went 20. So actually, I can keep that, move that over to this side. It'll snap to the guides. And I can use that. And it turns out that I did line up properly. And again, fixed size, I could actually create a 20 by 20 box too and do the very same thing if I wanted to. On the other side here, I can line that up and create another guide over there and on down the road. So again, using the selection tool as a measurement tool in some regards, or a shim. All right, I'm going to turn all that off. Okay, so I've narrowed down my CTA a little bit. So there's going to be some spacing between each one of these CTAs. You can already see it established there, but as this gets better and better, it'll be like cleaner and cleaner. And then with my CTAs, I can do that very same little trick with my graphic concern, but I have some other things I have to deal with first. First of all, I realized that when I created my graphic, I should have put this box in my CTA areas, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an overlap on my tech content over my graphic. So I'm going to move that box up into my content area and then flip it. Turn on my guides and my grid there to make sure and then grab the graphic, edit, free transform, and I'm going to flip it over so it's actually taking up the content area, not the graphic area. Apply that. And then I can use that, and I'll change that to content. And I can fill that with a solid color, take off the stroke. And I'm going to fill it with a gray. Okay, and then I'll leave that for a moment. And then I'm going to go back to this existing CTA and go over to the path panel and double click on that so that I can make a selection. And then on my graphic folder, I'm going to create a nice little mask there. I get rid of the word graphic. I don't need that anymore. And actually, I don't need that whole box either because I've got the graphic that I want. I'll go in there and grab a graphic. And this one is a bunch of stuff, so I'll select all layers, edit, oops, sorry, select all, edit, copy, merge, and edit, paste. I'm going to turn off the little content bit there and make sure that this guy fits all the way into the graphic. And it does. Turn off my guides and grids there just to see what's going on. And there's my content. And then I'm going to go over here and make sure that this actually snugs up, and it should snap nicely. There it does. And I could go back in here with this, and I could adjust the up here, fill, adjust it maybe down to 90 or 80%, so you have like a little, so I can see the graphic there. And then go back in here and do some adjustments. And remember now, content needs to be, if it's going to be real content, then it needs to be 16 by 24, not as big as it is. So I'm going to go back in here and get my positioning and use that same method of changing out the content here and using a text, up in the text boundary box area. And again, I'm kind of guessing here, so I better go back and put in a guideline here. So I can use my 20 pixel, put in a guideline there. And then go back to my layer 2 text layer here and double click on that to resuscitate the, that in there. And then go get some lorem ipsum here. Sentence there. And double click on that again, Command P. Now, change that to 16 as its content, and 24. And nice, and then change the color there, maybe, well, make sure that at least it's concurrent with the other colors, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then my header 2. Again, same thing. Do I want my header 2 to be the same size as my 24, or should header 2 should be bigger than my menu but smaller than my header 1? My header 1 was at 60, so maybe I'll put my header 2 could be at 36. And actually, that gives me nice. It depends on what I type in there, I suppose. That might end up biting me that I will have too big a header. So I'll make my header 2 at 3. So I'm going to go back to my collection of information here, and I'm missing a few things. So first of all, I got an H1 tag, which is at 60 pixels. I got an H2 tag, which is at 30 pixels. I've got, those are all at using font weight, again, of 500 and a color of the copy there. And again, because these are headers, they need to have font weight adjustments to them. And also then the color. So I'm going to be using the charcoal gray, so I'll toss the color in there too. And there's my H1 and H2. And then my body tag, which is content. So again, that's 16 pixels, and a quick way to modify that is 16/24. That gives 16 pixels, 24 pixels for your line height. And again, the body will behave as regular. It will not make things so you don't have to put in a font weight for that. And away we go. So that's going to be, and then I can use that. And then when I create more CTAs, I will basically just throw these two away and then duplicate CTA1 and move that over and put in some more imagery. Move down to the footer. Okay, so the same thing here. I'm going to have the footer and login area. I'm going to get rid of those boxes completely. I'm not going to use them at all. So I can just throw them away or drag them down to the garbage can. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change in my footer utility, because these are not major items of navigation. I'm going to reduce the size to 16. Now remember, nothing is to be smaller than 16. And then make a note of that. So in my down here, my footer utility will be 16 pixels. And also, I'm going to use subtle gray. So again, people aren't driven to them because this is a subtle this is information, and this login would be for admin purposes. It's not for general use purpose. So that's why I kind of gray it out. That's my footer utility, but I also have a footer menu, which has a style. And that's actually the same style as utility, but I got to make sure it is that. So I'm going to double click on that and change the color to be the blue, but leave it there like that. And then I can simply just duplicate, and you could do one of two things. You could either duplicate and copy all of this and just copy that, or say same as utility style, which is what it is, because that utility menu up there and my footer menu have the same style. So you wouldn't come up with two styles. You would use the same style or class in that case, but you wouldn't replicate that if it's the very same style. But in that case, this is as far, and save that. This more or less is as far as you don't really even have to put the graphics in there. I put those in there just to show you that you can. But allocating the space, but I didn't change my wireframe overall. I might have repositioned a few things vertically. I brought in something in the spacing wise, but I did make sure that everything was contained within the allocated space that was designated for it. I repurposed some boxes for color fill. I also used them to create some graphic buckets, or the masks. And I made sure that my text was universal, at least as far as its font selection, and then came up with a reasonable way of styling all that. Taking notes along the way so that later on I can have a nice little notes already taken up for me. All right. Okay, so I'm going to end recording.